Today, I'm going to be ranking my top 10 favorite wonder weapons that we've gotten in Call of Duty Zombies history. One of the things that encourages replayability on a Zombies map is a great wonder weapon because it just feels so good to grind for that opportunity of getting a powerful and very fun weapon. But before I get into my list, I do want to throw out a couple of disclaimers that I also said on my top 10 boss fights video. The rules from that video are going to apply here, so that means this is going to be a Treyarch only list, mainly due to the fact that I haven't played enough non-Treyarch maps to give me a solid opinion. Also, I want to make it clear that elemental wonder weapons, or wonder weapon variants, however you want to refer to them as, are going to be included on this list, but instead of separating each one and just saying the light sword from Citadel, or the fire bow, or the ray gun Mark P, I'm going to be combining the variants together. So instead of separating each kind, I'll be saying things like the D Shockwave variants on D Machine, or the Elemental Gauntlets from Ancient Evil. I'm going to combine them because, to me, it just feels cheap to separate each of them, and honestly, they would probably take up about 90% of this list if I did that. So similar to what I did on my boss fights video, I'm going to take a second to list 2 honorable mentions. And these are wonder weapons that took me some time to figure out if I wanted to put them in my top 10, but it didn't quite make it, and I still wanted to include them in some way. So with that being said, my first honorable mention is going to go to the Chrysalax Savager from Forsaken. This is a wonder weapon that I've always really liked, and I know the community likes it as well, at least for the most part, but even then I have found the Chrysalax pretty underrated. I always get nervous whenever the wonder weapon is a lot more melee focused because those are very easy to mess up, but this actually handles it pretty darn well, and not only that, you also have the gun variant, so you have both a close and long range attack. And I just think the overall design of the Chrysalax with the Dark Ether crystals and the sound it makes when you're equipping it and moving it around, it is so satisfying to use and so much fun. So I figured it's pretty reasonable on my end to at least give this wonder weapon an honorable mention spot on my list. And my next honorable mention is going to go to the KT-4 or Masamune from Zetsubo no Shima. Now this is a wonder weapon I honestly didn't really consider for my top 10, but after coming up with this list, the KT-4 was one that I really didn't know what to do with. Because it's not necessarily one of the greatest wonder weapons of all time, but I remember doing high rounds on Zetsubo and I seriously enjoyed using this. It was insanely fun just chilling down in the elevator and getting to use this thing. I also think that it is really fun to get. The quest for the KT-4 and even its upgrade is actually pretty fun for most of the steps, minus a few RNG things. But it's really cool how you have the whole spider mini-boss sequence. I think that is so unbelievably cool, and even the rainbow water plant step is a lot of fun to do in my opinion. So even though it's not the most incredible wonder weapon ever, I still wanted to give the KT-4 some credit and put it here in the honorable mention spot. And now it is time to begin the actual top 10 list. Starting things off at the number 10 spot is going to be the Elemental Swords from Citadel des Morts. It is fair to say that these swords are definitely pretty controversial amongst the Zombies community. There are plenty of people out there who actually don't like these swords, and for the most part, I totally see why they think this. Even I have my slight gripes with it, and I'm mainly just underwhelmed at what they ended up being because I knew that it could have been a lot better. However, I absolutely do not think they are bad wonder weapons whatsoever. From a visual standpoint, the swords are some of the best designed wonder weapons we have gotten in recent years. I already mentioned how much I like the way the Chrysalax looks from Cold War, but I think the swords look even better. Each one has their own personality and vibe, which is presented not only through the way it looks, but also the fact that the swords have specific themes that play for each one. That was such an amazing touch. Another controversial topic relating to the swords is also the quest to get each one. Many people either just don't like the way to get the swords or they wish it was longer, and while I do agree that they could and maybe should have been longer, I still do like a lot of the quests to get them, especially the Raven Sword quest. That one is such a fun one to do with the little puzzle at the beginning and then the little escorting sequence and the music that plays during that. Very awesome stuff in my opinion. The Light Sword quest is a lot of fun to do as well. There really isn't much to it. All you have to do is kill parasites near a door and shoot symbols in the correct order, but I still find even that just somewhat enjoyable to do. The Fire Sword quest is probably my second favorite one to do, just behind the Raven Sword quest. This one is very exciting and even nerve-wracking at times, depending on the situation you find yourself in, because as you bring the fire back to the dragon, you could be running into zombies that were either already there in the round or just spawning in, but it is a lot of fun to do. The Lightning Sword quest is probably my least favorite one, just because it's the most simple to do and there really isn't anything too standout about it. The final step of it looks cool, but is really not all that incredible. And in terms of just the overall gameplay of the swords, this is where things can get a bit divided between the community, but I personally really do enjoy using the swords. Like I said earlier, each one has their own strengths and their own personality, and it really encourages me to pick up certain ones for certain things every now and then. I also think that with these recent buffs and that melee macchiato augment, that the swords are much better than they were pre-update. If these swords never got buffed, I honestly don't know if they would be here. So overall, I think the swords are a lot better than what people make them out to be, as I genuinely enjoy messing around with them and even high rounding with them. And while I do have slight critiques and am kind of underwhelmed by what the swords ended up being, they are still top 10 wonder weapons in my opinion. And coming in at the number 9 spot is going to be the Alistair's Annihilator from Dead of the Night. To be honest, this is another example of a wonder weapon that I didn't think would make the top 10, but after sitting down and coming up with this list, I couldn't think of why I would put the Annihilator any lower than this. This is another really fun wonder weapon to use, and it's pretty unique for the most part. The whole idea of one weapon having the ability to do multiple different things, like create a tornado, or turn the zombies, or burn them up. Having all of these different abilities and elements to one weapon is super cool in my opinion. It also just completely fits the vibe of this map, and that is super important as well, because having a wonder weapon that matches the environment or the design the map is going for makes it even better. The player can get a more robust experience from the wonder weapon if it's designed in a way to aid the map experience, and the Alistair's Annihilator is a great example of that. It's also a pretty good weapon for high rounding, not necessarily one of the best to high round with, but it gets the job done enough. And it's incorporated into the Easter egg pretty nicely as well for the most part. I also quite enjoy the quest to get the Annihilator, having to upgrade to 3 versions of the gun, starting off with the regular Alistair's Folly, to getting a few parts for the Chaos Theory, to then getting some more parts for the upgraded Annihilator. I personally enjoy doing it. Some people may find it annoying just because of the amount of parts there are. I would say the worst part is having to wait for all the vampire bile, but everything else is pretty fun to me. So there you have it, the Alistair's Annihilator, a very fun wonder weapon to use, and I have a blast using it all the time. The design is cool, the vibes are cool, and it is such an awesome weapon. So it'll take the number 9 spot. And coming in at the number 8 spot is going to be the Paralyzer from Buried. Now listen, if this was a wonder weapon list based on sheer power, then this would definitely not be in the top 10. But sometimes you just have to take a step back and just have some fun with a wonder weapon. There is a level of bias here because Buried is one of my childhood maps. It's the map that really got me into the casual game flow of zombies, and it's what really made me start playing zombies more than multiplayer. So it feels reasonable to say that the Paralyzer is also a classic childhood wonder weapon of mine. The feeling that I got when I was younger of getting the Paralyzer from the box was so good. It's so nostalgic to me. It is so much fun to kill zombies with and just to goof around with. The fact that they gave you a wonder weapon that lets you levitate around the map allows you to get around a lot more efficiently. It's a lot of fun playing with other people as well because you can make your friends start flying away as well. A lot of different options with this. Gameplay wise, like I said, not the most powerful wonder weapon and it's really not close, but it does get the job done, and even better if you are camping in certain spots. The Paralyzer being able to freeze zombies or at the very least slow them down can really go a long way, especially if you have other powerful wonder weapons like the Ray Gun Mark II and stuff like that. The Paralyzer is the primary example, in my opinion, of a wonder weapon not always needing to be super powerful in order for it to be really good. There are other really good examples out there, but this one has always stuck out to me. I love the Paralyzer, I always have, and that is why it takes the number 8 spot. And coming in at the number 7 spot is going to be the Cerberus from Mauer der Toten. This is one of the more surprising wonder weapons to me because there really isn't that high of a concept to it, at least compared to so many others out there. The Cerberus should not have been a weapon that I liked that much just based on the idea of it, but then you put it in practice on the map and it turns out to be one of the most satisfying wonder weapons out there. This is some of the most fun I've had with a wonder weapon in recent years, and that's including some of the more recent titles over the years, but it's not a weapon that's all that unique, so how do they manage to make that work? Like, I literally remember booting up a game of Mauer and unintentionally going to round 100 with basically just the Cerberus because I just didn't want to stop using it. There are 4 variations to this wonder weapon, which, guess what, we've seen that before, but what's refreshing this time around is that instead of having to craft each version of the weapon, you pick it up off the ground as you kill zombies, and I think that is much more beneficial, especially with the way the Cerberus is designed. I feel like it would have been more frustrating if the player was forced to craft each version of the Cerberus in order to use it, because there really isn't much of a use for the different weapons in the Easter egg, except for when you have to laser the wall in the basement to open up the lab, but you don't need the other ones, so I am thankful they decided to just let you pick them up through an easier method, and it really works here. But of course, the original version is my favorite, and I think a lot of other people in the community can agree with me on that. And it's pretty powerful. It kills zombies very effectively in the higher rounds, and hopefully my round 100 story is a good example of that. You can basically mow down hordes of zombies and even special enemies as well, like the Disciples and the Panzers. Whenever I hop on Mauer der Toten, I instantly get excited at the fact that I can get this wonder weapon every game and just have a great time with it. Not too many wonder weapons can do that, so I think this rightfully deserves the number 7 spot. And coming in at the number 6 spot is going to be the Wave Gun from Moon. I used the Alistair's Annihilator as an example of a wonder weapon that perfectly fits the vibe of a map, but I think the Wave Gun is an even better example of this. For a map that takes place on the moon, you need one of the most sci-fi wonder weapons of all time, and that's exactly what they gave you. I also need to admit with this one that similar to the Paralyzer, there is some bias because this was one of my favorite wonder weapons growing up. Of course, the only downside to this being that you have to get it from the box, but I just love using this. It's so fun and silly, and it's interesting that you get 2 modes to this weapon. You can use the zap guns, which basically act like dual-wield ray guns, and then you have the actual wave gun where you can shoot a horde of zombies and they all start blowing up like a balloon and exploding in the air. And it's even more fun to use this on the moon where there's no sound, so all you hear are the little dings when the zombies explode. And in general, it's actually not that bad of a wonder weapon gameplay wise. It can get you to some high rounds. I'm also just a sci-fi junkie. I love anything that's sci-fi, and I think that this not only fits that genre super well, but it is just so much fun to use in general. So, while it may not necessarily be top 10 wonder weapon material for a lot of the community out there, it is for me personally, just simply because of the fact that it fits all the criteria of what I ask for when given a wonder weapon with a concept like this. And because of that, it'll take the number 6 spot. And kicking off the top 5 is going to be the Elemental Gauntlets from Ancient Evil. If there's one thing you can rely on most of the time for the elemental wonder weapons formula, it's the extra push for content, because there usually is a somewhat lengthy quest to get each variant, of course some more than others, but having to do these elaborate steps to retrieve each version provides much more things to do on the map rather than just crafting one version and calling it a day. For the gauntlets, the quests to get these are not that lengthy to be honest, but that is just one half of the equation. The other half is how fun it is to do these quests. Will you want to go back and continue doing it? And in my opinion, I think the quests for the gauntlet strike that balance of not necessarily super lengthy, but a lot of fun to do. I feel like that just embodies Ancient Evil so well, the whole philosophy of things not being overly sophisticated, at least compared to some other maps, but being super enjoyable to do. And like I said, that carries over to the wonder weapons as well. From a gameplay perspective, these gauntlets are a lot of fun to use. Each of them bring a different method of killing zombies. You can have one that basically acts as a constant thunder gun, you can have one that freezes zombies and makes them sink into the ground, and you get the idea. The typical idea for the 4 elemental wonder weapons formula. The only aspect of these weapons that I see people critique is the lack of ammo, and that is also the area where if I had to criticize anything, I guess it would be that. Although, I don't have the ammo problem as much as other people seem to have it, but of course, everyone has their own experiences and stuff. There is also that side quest where you can upgrade your gauntlets even further and get more ammo for it. Now, it is only 10 more bullets, but honestly, 10 bullets can go a long way, especially for a high rounding. Every bullet counts, so it may not seem like a lot, but it's certainly beneficial. The elemental gauntlets are one of my favorite aspects of Ancient Evil, which I consider one of my favorite maps of all time, so the wonder weapons clearly have a lot of value. They are so much fun to go for, so much fun to use throughout the Easter egg and high rounding, and it is a great one to start off the top 5 with. And coming in at the number 4 spot is going to be the Thunder Gun from various maps. I said that power doesn't always make a really good wonder weapon, and I still stand by that. But at the end of the day, we find more enjoyment from wonder weapons that are able to absolutely obliterate hordes of zombies. Those are the best ones because the more power a wonder weapon has, the more the player will want to go for it. The Thunder Gun made its debut on Black Ops 1 Kino, and honestly, I'm so thankful they chose that map of all things to bring the players a weapon like this. And I mainly say that because of the god-awful Nova Crawlers that completely ruin training. The Thunder Gun just makes them not even a threat anymore, as it's able to just absolutely annihilate every one of them. They also ended up bringing the Thunder Gun back for Ascension, and as much as I liked it on Kino, it probably fits a bit better with the sci-fi vibe of Ascension, even though there isn't the greatest use for it like there is on Kino in my opinion. And then, of course, they bring it back for Revelations on Black Ops 3, and even though there isn't much originality to it, I do think that it fits pretty well on the map. It's extremely useful for killing Margwas and Panzers and all of the crazy things that you gotta fight on that map. The only map I would say that the Thunder Gun doesn't really fit on, in my opinion, is Tog der Toten, because it just feels like this was a wonder weapon they wanted to throw on the map just for content, I guess. There's not much of a usage for it except for high rounding. Listen, I'm not going to complain too hard about it because it is nice to see the Thunder Gun every now and then, but at the same time, what's the point of it being there? If we want to go into the gameplay of the Thunder Gun, like I said, it is an incredibly powerful wonder weapon. It doesn't have a lot of ammo, and some people could see that as an issue. For me, it makes me be more decisive with how I want to use the Thunder Gun. Do I want to go ahead and eliminate this horde of zombies, or do I want to conserve ammo? And besides, they give you kind of enough, especially when you pack a punch. There's not a lot I really need to say about the Thunder Gun in order to tell you how good it is. If you've held this wonder weapon even just once or twice, you probably know what I mean. This has always been one of my favorite wonder weapons ever since I started using it, and so it will take the number 4 spot. And coming in at the number 3 spot is going to be the Apothicon Servant from Shadows of Evil and Revelations. To sum this up, I've always considered the Apothicon Servant very similar to the Thunder Gun in terms of sheer strength, but what puts this weapon above the Thunder Gun, though, is the design of it and just how cool it is. Instead of giving us a weapon that shoots out wind and blows zombies away like how the Thunder Gun does, they give us a giant tentacle that can shoot black holes that does just as much, if not more damage than the Thunder Gun can, and that alone puts it above it. Not to mention that this weapon made its debut on the perfect map, and I talked a lot about how important it is for wonder weapons to fit the vibe of a map, and ladies and gentlemen, you have the Apothicon Servant. I mean, it perfectly fits this map, and it elevates the experience. It's so much fun to high round with this, but it does have that one issue that everyone complains about similar to the Thunder Gun, which is the lack of ammo. However, it definitely feels like it affects the Apothicon more because you actually can't pack-a-punch this weapon on Shadows, so there isn't much of a workaround besides using Gobblegums or just waiting for max ammos. But I've already shared my thoughts about how I feel about the lack of ammo for this. It makes it pretty well balanced for its power, and it also increases decisiveness, and I do like that. I'm always having to alternate between using my extremely powerful wonder weapon versus the options I have, like traps, my other weapons, my swords, or whatever I have. They also ended up bringing the Apothicon back for Revelations, and similar to how I felt about the Thunder Gun, I do think it somewhat works on this map as well, and you can actually pack-a-punch it on this map by doing a weird side quest where you shoot rocks, but either way, it gives you a lot more ammo for you to be happy with. So overall, the Apothicon Servant is one of the most reliable wonder weapons, and it always feels great to get it because you feel so incredibly overpowered, but you still need to manage your ammo well, so I'm perfectly happy with this kicking off the top 3. And coming in at the number 2 spot is going to be the Elemental Bows from Der Eisendrache. Fair to say that these things are some of the most universally loved wonder weapons in the zombies community, and for all the right reasons. The elemental bows are an absolute blast to get in general, but just the concept of having these different bow and arrow variations killing zombies is so incredible. Like, it's so insane to just take a step back and think about the fact that we have the ability to wield bow and arrows that do insane numbers on hordes of zombies. It's just one of those moments that people who played zombies all the way back in 2010 would not believe. The elemental wonder weapons formula has worked about 90% of the time for Treyarch, and for good reason, but I would say that it really works when each variant has the ability to do different things for the most part, as well as support different types of players and the way that they play the game. Not only does that just make the player want to strive for getting the wonder weapon, but it also encourages players to pick up different bows and try different things with it and experiment around. The lightning bow is obviously the crutch bow. It's the one that players like to get the most because it's the most powerful, it's fairly easy to get, and it works really well when trying to high round or do the Easter egg solo. And honestly, it would be very interesting to view a statistic on how many people get certain bows, just to see how many people get the lightning bow every game. The wolf bow is almost like a mini thunder gun because of the fact that it shoots out this blast of air that blows zombies away basically, but it's more important because this is probably the most casual bow out there. It's the easiest to get and it's the easiest to use because there's no real strategy involved with the way to use this bow, so it's a wonder weapon that the casual player in the lobby can easily get on their own if they're not looking for any kind of challenge. The fire bow is one that actually takes more skill to acquire, so it's a bow that many of the hardcore fans can try and go after, or if there are any casuals that are looking to get some kind of challenge from the mode, then they can try and go after this bow. It can be one of those moments where you feel like you've become a much better player once you've gotten it. And then you have the void bow, which also requires some skill to get, but in a kind of different way. With the fire bow, you need to rely on some solid gameplay skills, but the void bow actually requires you to solve some puzzles and use your brain, so it can still provide a level of challenge for the hardcore fans out there, while also being another one of those bows casuals can go after if they desire. So this formula shows how unique each variant is and what that can do for the overall gameplay experience. And speaking of the gameplay, the bows, for being pretty different, fit right into the overall gameplay loop, and each of them are so much fun to use, some more than others of course, but that's the nature of wonder weapon variants. We always choose one over the other, but each of them bring their own strengths and are great to use. So with that being said, the elemental bows are going to take the number 2 spot, and it is now time for the number 1 pick. And finally, coming in at the number 1 spot is going to be the elemental staffs from Origins. There's a good chance that many of you are groaning right now because this is a very cliche answer. I understand that, but at the same time, it's cliche for a reason. There's just no way I can deny in any way that the staffs are not some of the coolest things we've ever gotten in Call of Duty Zombies. In my opinion, the staffs are the best example of the elemental wonder weapons formula. I think Origins did it the best. They're the most fun to go after and use, and I complimented the bows for being very distinct, but the staffs are basically the same way. And the thing I love the most is that in every game of Origins, I'm getting the staffs in a different order, and this is mainly due to the fact that there is a combination of designed part spawns like the Gen 6 Fire Staff part, or all of the parts for the Lightning Staff when you have to use the tank. But there's also some RNG parts, like all of the Ice Staff parts when it snows, or all of the Wind Staff parts in the Giant. So this basically means that you will probably be getting the staffs in different orders each game depending on your luck, and I really like that. My least favorite is probably the lightning staff. Not that it's bad, but I just find that it's the least interesting to go for, and even just gameplay wise, it's nowhere close to being the superior one. It basically acts as a wonder waff, at least the charge shot does, which is to be expected from an electric weapon, but that doesn't necessarily make it amazing. The wind staff is one of my go-to staffs. It's one of the first ones I like to get, if I get lucky enough to get it first, that is, but this one acts as another mini thunder gun that's shooting this blast of air at zombies, and then once you upgrade it, it becomes one of the more powerful staffs, especially in the earlier rounds in which you can create a tornado that sucks zombies into it and kills them. Nothing's really going to be able to touch you when you get this staff. The fire staff is probably my favorite non-upgraded staff, and I do find that important because each staff definitely has a decent difference in power when you upgrade it, and most of the staffs are not the greatest when they're non-upgraded. However, this one, and you could make an argument for the wind staff as well, is probably the best non-upgraded staff, and it's also really good when it's upgraded, of course. But my favorite staff definitely has to go to the ice staff, which is so funny as well because it's probably my least favorite non-upgraded staff. Like, this thing is not great at all when it's not upgraded, but once you do upgrade the ice staff, it becomes the best staff for high rounding, in my opinion anyway, and I feel like a lot of others can agree with me on that. So I don't care if you think this is a cliche pick or not, the elemental staffs continue to be some of the coolest things we've ever gotten in this mode. They're my favorite wonder weapons of all time, and y'all can deal with it because it's taking the #1 spot. But let me know what you guys think of my list. You can leave a comment and let me know if you agree or disagree, maybe what you would have changed or whatever the case may be. I like talking about these things, so definitely feel free to share your thoughts. And of course, be sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and hit the notification bell to stay notified for other videos and streams that I do in the future, and I'll see you guys in the next one.